So I want to tell you about my mom. She is this incredible firecracker of a woman. She is about 5'3". She looks like June Cleaver. She has the tenacity of a bulldog, and she curses like a truck driver. She grew up in the projects of Newark, New Jersey, to two alcoholic parents, and she learned by necessity how to stretch a dollar bill around the block like 5 times. And my mom made a promise to herself. She said somehow, some way, she was going to find a way to a better life. One of my fondest memories growing up as a kid in New Jersey was sitting around the kitchen table with my mom cutting out coupons, because she loved to teach us all the different ways that we could save money as a family. That was really important to us. And she also taught me about the fact that big companies and brands would send you cool free things like recipe books and cooking utensils if you saved up what were known as proofs of purchase. Do you guys know what those things are? Yes. So one of my mom's most prized possessions in the world was this tiny little AM/FM radio that she got from Tropicana orange juice for free. It was the shape, size, and color of an orange. It had this red and white straw sticking out of the side. That was the antenna. And my mom's one of those moms who's always busy. She's always doing something. She's always working on something. And I knew as a little girl I could find her somewhere around the yard or somewhere around the house by listening for music blaring out of that tiny little Tropicana orange. So one day, I'm coming home from school, and I hear music playing off in the distance, and I get closer to my house, and I look up, and I see my mom perched precariously on the roof of our 2-story house with her little orange next to her butt. And I'm like, "Mom, what are you doing up there? Are you okay?" And she yells down, "Ree, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. The roof had a leak. I called the roofer. He said it would be at least $500. I said, screw that. I'm doing it myself." That's my mom. Another day, I come home from school, and I hear this little music blaring from the back of the house. So I walk to the back, and it turns out my mom's in the bathroom. I push open the door. There's pipes sticking out of the wall. There's power tools on the floor. There's dust particles in the air. It looked like an explosion went off. And I was like, "Mom, are you okay? What's going on? What's wrong?" She's like, "Ree, I'm fine." She's like, "The bathroom tiles had some cracks in it. I didn't want it to get moldy, so I'm retiling the entire bathroom." Now, you guys got to get, this is the 1980s. This is a pre-internet, pre-YouTube, pre-Google world. My mom is only high school educated, but I never knew what she'd be doing, but I knew I'd find her by finding the sound of that little radio. So one day I come home from school, and it's late. You know, in the fall when it's dark out, and you have that eerie feeling outside? I walk up to my house, and it's completely dark, and it's silent, which for an Italian-American home, that's not a good sign. I walk in, and I had a pit in my stomach, nervous about what I might find. Where's my mom? Where's the sound of that little radio? All of a sudden, I heard some clicks and clacks, and I followed that sound, and I discovered my mom in the kitchen, hunched over the kitchen table, which looked like an operating room. She had a screwdriver, electrical tape, and then spread out in front of her was like a dozen pieces of a completely dismantled little Tropicana orange radio. And I was like, "Mom, are you okay? That's your favorite thing. Is everything all right?" She said, "Oh, Ree, it's fine. The tuner dial was a little off, and the antenna was busted, so I'm fixing it." And I stood there for a minute, watching my mom work her magic like she always did, and I finally thought to ask the question that I always should have asked, which was this: "Hey, Mom, how do you know how to do so many different things that you've never done before, but nobody's showing you how to do it?" And she put down her screwdriver, she cocked her head to the side, and she looked at me and she said, "Ree, what are you talking about? It's no big deal. Nothing in life is that complicated. If you roll up your sleeves, you get in there and you do it. Everything is figureoutable." And I was like, whoa. That phrase was cool. And it washed over me, and it planted a seed in my soul that I swear to you has been the most powerful driving force in my life ever since. So when I was in high school, there were some years that I spent, because I got kicked out of my house and I was estranged from my family, and it helped me get through that time. I also found myself in the midst of a toxic and abusive relationship, and that phrase helped me extricate myself from that. When I got into college, and I'm the first family in my family to go to college, it helped me secure these rare work-study positions that I really needed in order to complete school. After I got out of school, That phrase helped me get every job I've ever had, from bartending, from waiting tables, from being on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, finance and Wall Street, working in publishing, then starting to teach hip hop and dance, and eventually becoming one of the world's first Nike Elite dance athletes and master trainers, to having the audacity to start a business at 23, despite the fact that I had no clue what the hell I was doing. I was completely insecure. I was piles and piles in debt. But I took that idea and I grew it into a global brand that I have today. It's what inspired me to get myself out of debt eventually and to take care of my relationships and my health. When I was probably about 28, it inspired me to start making videos on my webcam, which later evolved into an award-winning online show that has tens of millions of viewers in 195 countries. And I'm not saying any of this to brag. I'm saying this because I am certain in my bones that everything is figureoutable. Now, you guys might not believe that that's true right now. How many people in here, a little skeptical, not really so sure that everything is figureoutable? Be honest. Anybody? I see at least one. Good, good, perfect, perfect, perfect. I love this. So let's talk about this. This is good. So when I was first starting to work on this book, I was out to brunch with some friends. And one of my friends had a 10-year-old son that came to brunch with us. And they said, Marie, what are you working on? I said, oh, I'm working on a new book. What's the title? Everything is Figureoutable. And the 10-year-old was like, no, it's not. Nope, absolutely not. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Tell me, young man, tell me what you believe is not figureoutable. And he said, well, we human beings, we can't grow working human wings out of our back so we could just fly away. And I said, well, that's true, but you do know about something called CRISPR, right? That might be coming down the road. And if anyone doesn't know what CRISPR is, definitely Google it because it's amazing. I said, but the fact is, even though we don't have wings, we human beings can indeed fly, right? And he said, yes, you're right. Okay, well, what about this one? We can't bring my dog back from the dead, the one that died like 2 years ago that I miss so much. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, that's some pet cemetery-ish right there. But the truth is, scientists are working on cryogenics, and people have been cloning their dogs for a few years now. And he was like, you know what, you're right. So conversations like that really inspired me to take a look at this from a scientific perspective, okay? Just because something hasn't been figured out up till now is not scientific proof that it isn't figureoutable, just that it hasn't been figured out yet. What's an example? 100 years ago, we would have thought that human beings walking on the moon sounded crazy. Actually, you would have thought someone would be a lunatic if they said that idea. That's actually where the word comes from, lunatic. Yet, in 1969, we figured out how to do that.
You have to start before you're ready.
Yes.
And it's a huge thing. The people that I know, and I want you to speak to it, the people that I know that are successful have a lower threshold in their mind of what they think they have to know before they begin. And many people, it's a blind spot. You have this thing that you think you have to have a certain amount of preparation or knowledge. And the people I know that win, they will step into rooms, into spaces that they are ill prepared for, and they figure it out, to quote you, when they get there. So speak to that a little bit, because it's so true.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest ways that all of us can hold ourselves back is listening to that nasty little lie inside our head that says, I'm not ready yet. I don't have enough experience. I don't have enough credentials. Who am I to do X, Y, or Z? And then we just delay. And before you know it, months, if not years, have gone by and we haven't made any real progress. You know, this was true for me. You know, when I started my coaching career, one of the things I discovered was that I just didn't want to be a coach. I've never really fit a traditional mode. And from doing all the personal development work to train myself to be the best coach I could be, I realized I have other passions. I love spirituality. I love writing. I love digital business, which was very new in the early 2000s. And I also love hip hop and dance.
Yeah.
And so when I was 25, I finally gave myself permission to go take my first official dance class. I never had an official class as a kid. I never took ballet or did any of that stuff. I just moonwalked across my mom's floor, right? And just loved hip hop music. But starting in the dance world at 25, sounds odd, but you're kind of over the hill.
Yeah.
Because most professional dancers have been doing it since they popped out of the womb.
Right.
And by the time they're 17, 18, they're going on tour with the hottest artists of the day. So, the The reason I'm telling the stories, it relates to Start Before You're Ready. So I'd finally gotten up the gumption to go start taking classes. My teachers told me, they're like, you're pretty good. You should try and teach. And by the way, this was in a gym environment. So Crunch Fitness in New York City, that's where I was taking classes because I could afford it.
Okay.
And I started becoming a substitute hip hop dance teacher. And again, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just felt like I was out of place, but here's what happened.
That's crazy.
One of my first dance classes that I ever taught solo, when I got done with it, this woman walked up to me and I was still sweating. I was trying to catch my breath and she said, "You're really good." I was like, "Thank you, that's amazing." She said, "You know, I work for MTV and we're looking for a choreographer / producer. I think you should come in and meet my boss." Now, Ed, in that moment, I was so green in the dance world, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, so my brain was going, I'm not ready for this.
Yes.
Why couldn't this opportunity come 2 or 3 or 4 years later when I know what the hell I'm doing, I'm better prepared, I could actually show up and maybe even land this gig? But here's what I realized. In my mind, I was like, you're already 25, which is over the hill in the dance world, and the only chance you're ever going to have to see if this could actually be a viable career for you is if you do this. So I remember standing outside of the Viacom building in New York City, wanting to throw up in the trash can because I was so nervous because I didn't feel ready, but I pushed myself, finally got up to that office, I knocked on the door, I just did my best in the meeting, and you know what? I got the gig.
So cool.
And here's the thing. That one experience of being hired as a choreographer / producer, by the way, I still didn't know what I was doing. When I was working with dancers that had 10 times more experience than I did, I was embarrassed because I didn't know all the terms. I didn't perform I did the best I could do in that moment, but there were a lot of things that I didn't know. My naivete did show. However, my growth and learning curve, man, it skyrocketed. And that one experience changed the entire trajectory of my career. It led to me eventually becoming a Nike Elite dance athlete, one of the first in the world. It led to fitness videos, choreographing commercials for Nike and Reebok and all of this stuff that would have never happened if I didn't start before I was ready.
So good.
Yes.
And I think, I'm just curious, it just occurred to me. By the way, I know a ton of men that's the case for.
Yeah.
Do you think, is it any more prevalent for a woman to feel that way, do you think?
Yeah, I do. I actually
Why?
think, well, so one of the things that I've discovered in my research, up to 70% of humans suffer from what's called imposter syndrome. So it's this feeling that we're a fraud or that we don't belong where we are, that we're somehow a fake and that people are going to find us out.
Yes.
Now, generally speaking, this affects everybody, but I find that women and people from marginalized communities tend to be harder hit by this because historically, we haven't been seen in positions of power. So if it's in the boardroom in business, right, most of the time we've seen men, and typically it's white men.
Yep.
If it's in any kind of creative, powerful position, right, we just don't see a lot of people that look like us. So we tend to go back to, well, I'm not ready. I need to over-prepare so that I don't make a fool out of myself and I really can crush it when I get into that arena.
I think you're right. It's one of the reasons I did the show. When I first started doing the show, I wanted to put on people that had maxed out achievement, but I also thought, what if I could give face to, in many cases, people that come from marginalized communities or smaller communities, just minority communities, whatever that might be, and give them a little bit more of a picture of examples of people that do that, because my sense is that that's true, and you've confirmed kind of the reason why. Now, you talk about in the book, one of the reasons that people have that imposter syndrome, and I want everyone to know this, I have it.
Yeah.
I have it, and there will be situations I find myself in where I'm like, they have no idea who I really am, right? It is this stage
not in a good way too, right?
Not in a good way.
Right.
No, I don't know. Certainly not in a good way. You know, whether I'm coaching somebody in a particular area and I'm thinking, do they know? You know, I still have that a little bit, and I think it kind of is good in the sense that it does cause me to over-prepare sometimes when I've got an opportunity. But one of the things I used to struggle with that I no longer do, that you talk about in the book, that is sort of a symptom of that disease, is this concept of having to be perfect over making progress.
Yes.
I love this part of the book, everybody, because this is a major thing many of you have.
Yeah, perfectionism.
Perfectionism is a huge
crushing.
thing. Yep.
Yeah, I think, so many of us, we want to do our best. So we have high standards and all of those things are wonderful. But there is a distinction between having high standards and performing at your best and suffering from perfectionism, which in the extreme can actually be deadly. So there's some research out there. And this is sad, but it's important to know. When they started talking to folks who had a relative who recently took their own life, they discovered that in over 50% of the cases, without prompting, the relatives described that person who's no longer here as being a perfectionist. They could never meet their own standards. They never felt like they were good enough.
Yes.
And when that roots in on a deep level, you can understand how someone could feel that depressed and feel that lost and feel like nothing they ever do could ever match up. So it's a real thing. And for me, you know, I have strains of that, and I'm so happy, you know, age and experience, you kind of see the world in a different light.
Yeah.
But the thing that's helped me the most and what we focus on in the book is this idea of focusing on progress, not perfection. When that's your metric for success, did I learn something today? Did I make an inch of progress, even if it doesn't look like progress? So there's actually a great graph in the book.
Yes.
And I'll see if I can describe it here.
Yeah, I love this.
So people imagine that progress kind of looks like this. You start out here and you're just new at something, and then you inch up and 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 inch up, and it's almost like this straight line to get to your goal. When in reality, progress kind of looks like this. You start here as a neophyte, and then you maybe inch up, and then you take 5 steps back, and then you go way down, and then you swirl around, and you go up and down, and it's just this incredibly squiggly line where there are setbacks.
Yes.
You absolutely feel like maybe you've taken 10 steps back,
Yes.
but that's still progress.
So true.
So when we're focusing on progress, not perfection, it's a really great way to keep your action in perspective and to keep moving forward, because perfectionism really just keeps people spinning their wheels.
Yeah, I think it's the number one excuse not to get started. And one thing everyone should know too, because I love this part of the book. Let me say something to you guys. You know that just staying after your dream is actual progress, because so many people on the race to getting that dream just quit it. The fact that you're just still in pursuit of it is a form of progress, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm blown away often by people I find. I think my son was a good example of this even in golf. He started out, he just naturally didn't come to him.
Yeah.
And I think if you watched him in the beginning, you'd think, my gosh, he should probably choose something else. Right? But that little boy just kept going to the driving range and hitting balls and hitting balls and hitting, and it didn't get, it would get a little better, and then I was like, oh my gosh, it's worse.
Yes.
It's actually worse. But what was happening in there was some sort of progress in his muscle memory and his insights and his confidence that he just put the work in. And this is true in all these things. Then there was a day, I remember showing up and he hit a ball and it made that sound it's supposed to make if you play golf, and I went, oh my God, he's got that sound now.
Yes.
And even after that, he'd shoot an 88 or a bad tournament. It's exactly the way it works in business and life. It's exactly the way a relationship works.
That's right.
I think people think my relationship's this straight line too. No, it's not. It has these huge setbacks and a big fight, and they let you down, and maybe someone wasn't truthful once, but it's the idea of staying in it if it's worth it to you that gives you progress. I love that.
Well, that you hit upon something really big there. Staying in it if it's worth it to you. I would love to circle back and talk about, just in case anyone listening right now is going like, okay, you guys, this is a cool idea, right? I get it. Everything is figureoutable. It's very positive, but I don't believe it. I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
So when I was first starting to work on the book, I was out to brunch with a friend who brought along her 10-year-old son. And they were like, hey Marie, what are you working on? New book, what's it called? Everything is figureoutable. And the 10-year-old was like, no, it's not. Nope, no, it's not figureoutable. And there may be people listening right now who feel the same way, and I welcome that. And I said, well, tell me more, young man, what's not figureoutable? And he said, well, we human beings can't grow working wings out of our back and fly away. And I was like, well, that's true, but have you heard of CRISPR? That might be coming somewhere down the line.
That's right.
And we human beings can indeed fly. And he was like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. He's like, well, what about this one? I can't bring my dog back from the dead. And I was like, well, that's some Pet Cemetery shit right there. But I said, you know, scientists are working on cryogenics, and human beings have been cloning dogs. And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right. So enough conversations like that inspired me to create a set of rules, which is really like a mental container that allows us to use this phrase and philosophy for its intended purpose, which is to help us create change and then help us create positive change in the world around us. So the 3 rules of the Figureoutable philosophy, this is helpful. Rule number 1, all problems or dreams are figureoutable. Rule number 2, if a problem isn't figureoutable, it's not really a problem, it's a fact of life. Death, taxes, gravity,
Right.
certain laws of nature.
Right. A guy my height can't dunk a basketball.
Correct.
Right, without a trampoline.
Rule number 3,
Right.
you may not care enough
There you go.
to solve this particular problem or reach this particular dream, and that's okay. Find something you do care deeply about and go back to rule number 1. So as you're relating
Love
to
it.
your son, right?
Yes.
So anyone listening going, well, X, Y, and Z isn't figure outable. It's like, well, you know, it might not be figure outable as of right now, but think about 100 years ago. Thinking about a man walking on the moon wasn't figure outable, yet 1969 happened, all of a sudden it is.
Yes.
And then I would say the other quick thing, again, just because we human beings have tough struggles in life, and there may be someone watching right now who's thinking, yeah, but you know, what about things like addiction or trauma or a life-changing or life-ending diagnosis? Are you telling me that that's figure outable? And I'll tell you, Ed, in the depth of my bones, I am, and here's why I say that with confidence. The first time I shared this idea outside of my own platform was on Oprah's Super Soul Sessions. It was like an 18-minute Oprah TED Talk. And after she put that out on her podcast, I started getting letters from people that I'd never met. They weren't familiar with my work, never worked with them. But this phrase really triggered something powerful. And one of the letters I got was from a woman named Jen. And she said, Marie, I loved your Oprah talk. It's actually a lesson my mom has been trying to teach me. And in fact, I sat down with my mom. We watched it together. It was awesome. But then everything changed. My beautiful mom, who's like my best friend on the planet, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And suddenly nothing seemed figure outable. She said, but I took a step back and I looked more deeply, and here's what I discovered. I could figure out how to find nursing care for my mom who lived in a rural area. I could figure out how to find foods that she could actually tolerate. And then this was the big one. She could figure out how to get medical equipment so that her mom could spend her last days, and in fact, her last 5 weeks on planet Earth exactly where she wanted to be, which was in her own home. So Jen said, I can say without a doubt that yes, everything really is figure outable. And thanks for sharing this small phrase that made a big difference to 2 women living on the other side of the world. She's from New Zealand.
Yeah, that just made a huge difference for lots of people listening to this.
Yes.
I relate to that a little bit. As I said to people, my dad's sick right now.
Yes.
You know, to the extent of my dad's cancer, I guess is probably unknown.
Yes.
But what's good about that? Well, what's figure outable about that? To be candid with you, it's helped me figure out a lot of my other personal relationships. I think it's helped my dad figure out what's really important to him.
Yes.
Sometimes these very difficult things open up the figure outableness in other areas of our life. I think he's starting to become more clear of his own mortality and what he really believes, where he's going in his spirituality. He's begun to figure out these things as a result of this time in his life. I've figured out that the time with my dad's a whole lot more important than I used to think it was.
Yes.
The time with other people I love. And so there are hidden blessings, these things that everybody says that I've been saying for 100 years, that everything happens for you and not to you. I really believe to be true, ultimately, if you believe in something beyond this life as well.
Yeah.
But you say something in the book that I talk about all the time that I think is right down this alley of the pursuit of what really matters to you finding happiness in your figure-outableness.
Yes.
So tell us what's happening and we will do our best to help you out.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I have been running my own business for the better part of the last 3 years. I guess 2.5 years. One of the first things that I did was sign up for B School, which was a really great experience. It helped me build my website for my company. I also, in my accountability partner, found someone who encouraged me to write a book about my business method, which is called Purpose Power, How Mission-Driven Leaders Engage for Change. And I just felt like, in thinking about your approach and your coaching and paying attention to all of your encouragement, I've tried to let myself be open to opportunities that show up, scan the radar, be surprised by things, not hold ideas too tightly, let them emerge and develop, and say yes as much as I can. And a lot of the work that I have done here 2 years later, I struggle with feeling like I sort of failed. Like a lot of the things that I wanted haven't come true in the way that I hoped that they would. And both trying to, internalize some of that responsibility and actions that I could have done differently, but also just feeling like the world is sometimes not a super forgiving and supportive place, which isn't to say that I don't have friends and mentors and great people in my life, but just sometimes it feels like swimming upstream. And now I find myself in a place where my husband has been offered his dream job in Europe, which is super exciting for him. Living in Europe is something that I have dreamed about for a long time. So there are a lot of things about that are, a dream coming true for me. But I'm also now in this position of sort of needing to abandon ship and sort of close up all of the things that I thought I was building. I felt like I was sort of building this garden and watering plants and trying to make things happen. And now all those things that I thought I was trying to make happen, I need to sort of turn over a new page and trying to figure out something new. So I'm both sort of left with this feeling like all of this effort that I put out, all the things that I worked really hard to create and do, none of them really generated the success that I was hoping for. And now I have to leave them and go start from scratch.
This is awesome, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing so honestly and bravely with us. I have a question for you. You said
Sure.
None of them turned out to create the success I had hoped for. What's your measuring stick? What was the success that you hoped for? I'm just curious.
Well, my measure, I think, was a couple of things. In running a business, I was really hoping to get to six figures by my second year. Not $500,000, but to surpass $100,000 in being able to pay myself. Mm-hmm. And that never really happened. I was able to sell business and negotiate contracts, but none of those things were, long-term. None of them paid as much as I hoped that they would. I wound up hiring people to work on those projects with me. And so, in the process, never really reached that profitability margin that I was hoping for.
Okay.
In publishing a book, I had sort of sold myself on this idea that, publishing a book is one of the best things that you can do for your credibility and your authority. And I found that the process of working with an independent publisher to be really, really hard. And that, there's not a whole lot of promotional support that's available. So I'm really have to, do a lot of that myself. And I don't have the sort of established platform that, a lot of publishers look for in an author. And so it really feels like a lot of the time I'm sort of spinning my wheels, and maybe I wrote a book it's a good book, but it's not the right book at the right time somehow, and so not being able to gain traction in an environment where there's a lot of noise, where there's a lot of resource scarcity. Nonprofits don't really have are really cash strapped, and so targeting nonprofits as a client base has been felt really frustrating because it's hard to get those organizations to prioritize hiring outside help as much as they seriously benefit from it.
That's really clear.
So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in right there. Thank you, by the way, for being so precise. So a couple things. One thing that I highlighted, which is common for all of us to experience these type of inner conflicts, but one that really jumped out to me was the primary and first thing that you mentioned was around financial success. And then you shared that you're focusing on nonprofits. And so we just know this, right? It's kind of a fact that if you are going into that particular sector, it is going to be more challenging to earn the type of money that I think you wanted to earn. So sometimes having those kind of inner conflicts between those two goals. For example, I don't think that if you, and I'm not saying that you do, but if you wanted to earn like a gajillion dollars, you wouldn't be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a nonprofit. There's just an intrinsic conflict point between those two ideas that it's clear based on what you're telling us that you found to be frustrating. So I think one of the most powerful things that you'll be able to do in this next chapter of your life is actually start to decide the metrics that actually matter to you. What is the most important thing for you to do or to experience, or who do you need to be in order to feel successful? And if operating in the nexus of politics and social justice and nonprofit is really where your heart lies, I think a little bit of a reality check may be important. Not to say that you can't earn six figures or multiple six figures in those categories, but I do think it's understandable that that may take a little bit more time. It's almost like this, my love. You're in the middle of a movie. It's like if you were watching a movie and you went to the theater and you sat down and you're eating your popcorn, and let's say the movie was 2 hours long, and about 45 minutes in, all hell breaks loose, right? There's a ton of conflict and things are really disappointing and the main characters seem to be hitting a wall. If you walked out of the movie at that point, you might be like, well, those characters were failures. They never reached their goals. You know, they were starting to do some things, but they had this conflict point, and then I left the theater because you know what? It just all didn't work out. So for you, in many ways, you know, to hear that you've been at this for a few years, by the way, I commend you for that. But in my experience over a few decades, it takes much more than a few years for any business to get really successful. So that's one thing I want to share. But more importantly, I think it's crucial as you enter this next phase, this next chapter of your adventure, to really get clear on what is most important to you. What are those metrics that matter? If financial freedom, if the kind of profitability of a business is the most important thing that lights you up. And by the way, there's no shame in that. I don't want anyone listening or you to feel guilty about like, I want to make a lot of money. It was actually a goal that I had for myself. I didn't want to make it at the expense of people. I never would or did do anything that violated my own morals or values or did anything out of integrity. It was always about doing good and making great money, right? But I think that you need to get clear on your priorities and clear on your metrics for success so that you have a measuring stick by which you can evaluate your own goals and your progress and what you're working on so that you feel good about them. And if money is one of your top things, I would encourage you to relook at whether or not being active in the non-profit sector or wanting to go in on like grassroots political campaigns is actually the place that you want to devote your time and energy.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the question around, you know, getting clear on the metrics that are important to me. I will say I didn't pursue this thinking that I would make a lot of money.
Yep.
I haven't been able to make enough money for it to be sustainable.
Yep.
So, you know, it's not, and I've been fortunate to have a partner who's been able to support me. So I don't have to, you know, take or sell business just to make rent month to month.
Yep.
But it's really been like that, not like I have dreams of, you know, making tons of money, but that the viability of just like the basic viability of it isn't there.
Yeah. And so this might be good news though. You're like, okay, I went down this path, and rather than taking it as something that you actually failed, there's a bunch of things that you did and accomplished, and now you can build off of them. Like you wrote a book. That's amazing. For anyone publishing a book, I'll tell you, I have friends, people that have platforms, that are established in their platforms, and they still have trouble getting people to read their book. It's an enormous amount of work. Anything that you do in the era that we're in right now, where there's so many different places that people can look and put their attention, whether it's social media or online blogs or television or podcasts, right? So there's always going to be that battle for how do you get people to care and pay attention. That's intrinsic for all of us. But what I'm most interested in is you not looking at everything that you've accomplished as a failure, but just as a starting point and a launching point for what's next. And can you extract lessons that are valuable, that will help you grow into this next chapter? Because I guarantee, yes, okay, good. There you were like, yes. That's where we kind of heard some life, because rather than looking at this or feeling, and I'm not saying that this is your viewpoint on everything, but feeling defeated or feeling like, wow, the world is a really unfriendly place and no one's supporting me and everything's an uphill battle. It's like, you know what? The world is really challenging. And in order for me to create a business and life I love, I'm going to have to get in there and be willing to be challenged. And I'm going to have to grow as a human and keep seeing things from this perspective of like, wow, this is really difficult. And you know what? That means I need to get stronger. This is really challenging. That means I need to up my skill set. Wow, what do I want to pay attention to? What is important to me? Understanding this landscape, I only have 24 hours in a day. What is the most important thing to me for me to achieve? Is it a certain amount of money in the bank account, or is it something else? And you're the only one that can answer those questions. And I think part of what's challenging about our world right now is that not enough of us are taking the time to define those metrics that matter. And therefore, we're just like a ping pong ball being bounced around. And we don't have any kind of chart for our own course, something for us to set sail on so that we know that we're on track for us. Not success defined by society, success defined by who we are and who we want to be.
Yeah, I think I started a business for the wrong reasons in some ways, and just in a weird way, watching Avengers Endgame recently, where Thor at the end is like, I'm not going to be who I'm supposed to be, who people think I'm supposed to be. I'm going to be who I am. In a weird way, that really resonated with me, because I think I allowed myself to believe that I needed the authority that came with running a particular business in a particular way in order to do the things that I dream about.
Yes.
And that I can maybe let myself off the hook from that to say instead, how can I qualify myself, not qualify in terms of credentials, but qualify in terms of, being suspicious of my own qualifications, less, and think more about just getting directly to the heart of what I want to do and the change that I want to create in the world.
Start there. The change you want to create in the world, that's the most powerful position to build your dreams off of, and to decide what kind of work that you want to do and where is going to be the best place for you to devote your time, your energy, and your talents. Right?
Yes.
Good.
I often, when I describe those dreams to people, they're like, wow, that's huge and ambitious and probably won't be achieved in your lifetime. So I feel like part of my challenge is also like finding what is the slice of the dream that you tackle first in order to build towards the bigger dream.
Well, I think most of our dreams won't be accomplished in this lifetime. That means that we're playing a really big game, and that's awesome. My bet for you is to go back to where we started, is to decide what are those metrics that really matter to you, right? How do you define success for yourself? And then don't overthink this. Just get in and start doing the work. I love that you've identified that you started a business for the wrong reasons. That's awesome. If I were you, I'd also take some time to journal about what have these past couple of years taught me? What are the lessons that I can extract for myself so that as I move forward, I'm not making the same mistakes again and again, but can actually use these experiences to fuel my growth.
Yeah.
Cool?
Yeah, great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, we're excited for you. And I'm actually really excited. I just want to highlight again, too. You're like, well, my husband got this dream job in Europe, and but I actually really wanted to live in Europe, too. It's like, girl, you need to start focusing on what's working rather than putting so much attention and energy on what doesn't.
Preach.
Yes. If you're ready to stop letting stress derail your happiness, I've got a free gift for you. You need to go to marielovesyou.com/stresslog. And I'm going to give you one of my favorite tools that I've ever created. I promise it will help you melt that toxic stress away fast. Go download it now.
So that we get a little bit of framework,
Yes.
I want people to understand, what does it mean for everything to be figure-outable, and where did you come up with that phrase?
So it was kind of interesting when we were creating the book and started selling it actually into foreign markets. They're like, well, how are we going to define this word? Everything is figureoutable because it doesn't translate into other languages. And I was like, okay, it is achievable. It means that something is possible. We started playing with all these words. But I think to answer the second question of how this phrase came about, I'm taking it back to Jersey, taking it back to the 80s, and taking it back to my mom, who is like this interesting character. So she's about 5'3". She looks like June Cleaver, and she curses like a truck driver. She grew up in the projects of Newark, New Jersey, to two alcoholic parents. And she learned by necessity how to stretch a dollar bill around the block like 5 times. And she promised herself that when she got older, she would find a way to a better life. So cut to me growing up
in this Italian American home. There's like, plastic covered couches, very working class. And one of my fondest memories was me and my mom sitting at the kitchen table and cutting out coupons. So because frugality is her number one thing in life, right? She loved teaching me all the different ways that we could save money. And she also introduced me to this idea of proofs of purchase. Do you remember those from? Yes. So if you like save up the fact that you bought X amount of boxes of cereal or whatever, and you mailed in this little piece of the box, that these brands would send you like a cookbook or utensils, like good stuff for free. And one of my mom's most prized possessions was this tiny little orange radio, like transistor AM, FM. It had a little red and white straw sticking out of the side. That was the antenna. And she got it for free from Tropicana orange juice. And my mom is the kind of person who's always busy, always doing something. And so as a kid, I knew the way to find her was to listen for the sound of that tinny little radio coming like somewhere from the yard or in the house. So like one day I was walking home from school and I heard the radio off in the distance. And as I got closer, it was coming from above, which was a strange kind of orientation. And I look up and we had a 2-story house. And my mom, who's tiny, is perched on the top of the 2-story house, like very precariously. And when you're little and you're short, everything is amplified. And I was like, Mom, is everything okay? Like, what are you doing up there? And in her very Jersey accent, she's like, Ree, I'm fine. The roof had a leak in it. I called the roofer. He said it's going to be at least $500. I said, screw that. I went into the garage. There was extra asphalt. I'm going to fix it. And I was just like, okay, that's Mom. Another time I came home and I heard the radio like blaring from the back of the house. So I walked to the back of the house and I saw the bathroom. It was like the door was cracked open. And as I pushed the door open, the whole room was filled with dust particles. There was like pipes sticking out of the wall. It looked like a bomb went off. And I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, is everything okay? And she said, the tiles had cracks in them and I didn't want the bathroom to get moldy. So I'm retiling the bathroom. Now, Tom, you got to get this again is the 1980s. My mom is high school educated. This was pre-internet, pre-YouTube, pre-Google. I never knew like where I would find my mom or what I'd find her doing, but that radio was always my clue. So one day, it was in the fall in New Jersey, the daylight savings had already passed, so it was dark and it was spooky. And I went home and it was totally silent and the house was dark, which is very odd for my family. So I walk in and I had that pit in my stomach that you have when you're nervous that something's wrong. And I start walking around the house and I didn't know where my mom was. And I felt like something bad had happened. And then all of a sudden I heard these tiny clicks and clacks. And I followed the sound to the kitchen and I saw my mom hunched over the kitchen table. It was like an operating room. She had like electrical tape and screwdrivers, and in a dozen or so little pieces, her Tropicana orange was completely dismantled. I was like, Mom, that's your little radio. What happened? Are you okay? Is it broken? And she said, oh, it's fine. The antenna was off and the dial was not working right. So I'm fixing it. And that was the first time I thought to ask the question that I really needed to ask all along, which was, how do you know how to do so many different things that you've never done before, yet no one's showing you how to do them? And she like put down her screwdriver and she cocked her head and she looked at me and she's like, what are you talking about? It's not that big of a deal. Nothing in life is that complicated. You can do anything you set your mind to. If you roll up your sleeves, you get in there and you do it. Everything is figureoutable. And I was like just in that moment. And I will tell you this, I don't know, Tom, for sure, whether she said those 3 words or that's what my childhood brain heard and translated, because you know how we do that kind of thing. But that phrase got embedded in my soul on such a deep level. And I just said it over and over again. And then I realized as I became an adult, it's been the single biggest driving force of my life. Like from, continuing to get rejected on like sports teams and cheerleading and going again and again, and like getting out of an abusive relationship when it was like my first love, to like getting into classes in college, to getting every part-time job I've ever gotten, every full-time job I've ever gotten, getting out of relationships, into relationships, building the entire business. Like I still use that phrase every single day. And so I knew I needed to write this book. But I think more importantly, right now, when we look around at what's happening economically, environmentally, socially, politically, we've got a lot of challenges that we're collectively facing. And my biggest hope was that if people pick up this book, of course, I want them to use it to help them build a better career or get their health back online or anything that is challenging for them personally. But honestly, I really, really hope that once people unlock that possibility within themselves, that people will pick up this book and say, you know what, there's bigger problems that we can figure out, and we need to do this together.
This is always risky because I could be misreading, but you look like you're getting emotional from telling that story.
I mean, I believe in this so much. Like my friend Toby, who runs a company called Shopify, I was writing the manuscript, writing. Okay, let's be real. I was like bleeding, like, oh, I can't write this. Like, you know, just trying to pound out on my keyboard. I am not an easy, like everything flows kind of writer. It's very torturesome for me. And I was trying really hard to write the manuscript. I saw my friend Toby. We said hi. He's like, Marie, how's the business? What's going on? What's happening in your life? And I said, everything is great. And I'm working on this manuscript. And he's like, why are you doing a book? He's like, that's so much work. And that's such a huge commitment. And everything else seems to be going great. It's not like you need to write a book. And I said, Toby, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, which could happen, I don't want it to happen. I hope I'm around for a very long time. But if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, this is the one idea that I would want to leave behind. That's it. Everything else I've done, that's awesome. It's beautiful. I'm proud of it. But if I can communicate this idea effectively and give people the gift that I was able to receive from my mom growing up, like I could go on to the next adventure feeling very satisfied.
That thing in what you just said about it being an idea that's worth telling and that could really last beyond you,
Yes.
It comes out in the book so well. And one thing that I loved in the book is how you essentially use font to shout. Yes. Everything is figureoutable. Everything is figureoutable. Everything. And I thought that it's really so powerful.
Are you only getting a fraction of what you want in your business and life? Are the things that you're looking to achieve taking way too long to come your way? If so, Gabby Bernstein may have your answer. In fact, she says that to manifest anything you want in your business, whether it's career goals, maybe it's relationships, your health, your happiness, the real work is an inside job. I am so thrilled today to bring you my dear friend and best-selling author, Miss Gabby Bernstein. Yay! Can you believe you're on Marie TV?
I know, I was saying I was like on Oprah today.
Yay!
It's just like being on Oprah.
This is awesome. So manifesting is such a cool topic. It's something that a lot of people may have some resistance to if they think it's like a little too woo-woo and it's a little too passive. And I know for me in my life, I'm such a go-getting kind of driven girl that in the past I used to have my own resistance to it. But as I've become older and a little more mature, I've opened my mind and I actually do consider myself quite a good manifester.
Yes.
So for our audience, can you define what exactly is manifesting?
Manifesting is acquiring the experience of what it is that you want to feel and being and living and believing in that experience and then allowing that experience to come into form.
So not only the experience, like say wanting to go on a vacation, but even if you want something like a new MacBook Air, you can manifest a new computer or
Absolutely.
or being a published author or having your business reach a certain level. So everything falls into that.
Everything falls into that category. Sometimes we manifest things far beyond our wildest dreams.
Yep.
So sometimes if we have a vision of something, it happens in a far greater way. So we want to stay open.
Yep.
So we can say, I want that MacBook Air, but maybe we get that MacBook Air that's a little bit bigger than we thought. You
Yeah.
know, or maybe it comes with an extra little gift.
Yeah.
But allowing ourselves to be open, this or something more.
Cool. So the way that I think about manifesting too, it's involved in the process of creation or creating. You know, I consider myself an artist and a creator. Do you see like a distinction between manifesting and creating?
Manifesting is very creative. It is the process of using your power energy and being in that presence of your high-powered energy and allowing that energy to co-create with the energy that's around you. So you're vibrating at a high frequency. I'm vibrating at a high frequency.
Girl.
We've done a lot of work. We've
Yep.
cleaned up a lot of our own crap. We
Yep.
believe in ourselves today.
Yep.
And that energy of believing in ourselves has attracted us together today and brought us into this space where we together are co-creating and teaching. If I hadn't cleaned up my side of the street, and if I didn't believe in myself the way I do, I would never have manifested being on Marie TV.
That's very true. So I know I like to always believe that I'm co-creating with the universe because I really believe there are no such things as coincidences. And I've had too many experiences in my life where I'm like, oh my God, that's what I wanted. And it all seemed to line up and it was incredible. So that's really part of what we're talking about here, right? Is our ability to play an active role, but almost paradoxically a passive role in helping things that we want come into our life.
Yeah, there's a really nice line from A Course in Miracles, which is the metaphysical text I teach. And it is, miracles occur naturally, and when they're not occurring, something has gone wrong.
That's interesting.
It's a good one, right? So what happens is that synchronicity, that flow, that effortless action, that just sort of allowing, oh, I was thinking about that and it just showed up. That's how life is supposed to be. We get in the way. Our negative belief systems, our fears, our anxiety, our anger towards the past, that future tripping and projecting, all of that energy gets in the way of allowing all of the miracles to occur naturally.
So this is awesome. So what I like to do on Marie TV, which you know, because I know you watch us every week, is to take an idea or a concept and really break it down and make it super actionable. So if someone has never heard of manifesting, or maybe they have, but they've been quite a skeptic and are like, this is BS, this stuff doesn't work. Can you break it down, like how to manifest? Like what's the first thing that we should be doing?
So the first type of manifestation is to get very, very clear. And if we're not clear about what we desire, then we can call in some really funky stuff.
Yeah, this is big. And I just want to interrupt you for a moment because like one of the things that I say again and again when I'm working with clients, I can help you get anything you want, but you have to tell me what that is.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's clarity is really, it's that secret key.
Because you're like a manifestation can opener. If somebody gets clear about what they want.
That's really funny.
That's your new name.
Oh, that's my new title. I'm a manifestation can opener. Yes, go
But
for
it's
it.
true because if somebody gets really clear about what they want, your work is just releasing all the blocks
Yeah.
and all the disbelief.
Yeah.
And so if you're clear, first and foremost, you must be clear.
Yep.
And you must be clear because if you are unclear, you'll start to call in some things that are not really what you want.
Yeah.
You'll be confused. The other piece is that once you're clear, you can also then get clear about all of the ways that you don't believe, all of the limiting beliefs, all of the negativity that might be blocking you.
Oh, this is good. So let's use an example. Let's take it from the top. So I know for both of us, this is something we share. You're a published author. I'm a published author. And I know many people in the world, it's one of their dreams to have their own book out on the shelf. So I know you must have gotten clear at one point. I am going to be a published author, right? Mm-hmm. So clarity, step number one.
Yes.
Number two, getting clear on everything that's preventing that, right? Your limiting beliefs. So
yeah.
Tell us some of yours when you first had that clarity.
Well, I often joke that I was a published author 3 years before I actually was a published author because I believed so deeply. But of course there was disbelief, and there was actually a period in my life where it was right when the recession hit. My stepfather says to me, I'm telling him all about my book that I wanted to bring into the world. And he said to me, well, it's a really tough time. It's going to be really hard because we've got resistors, people just having a hard time with the realities of the world.
Yep.
And saying, oh, well, you're going to have a hard time getting your book published. And I looked at him with so much conviction and so much faith, and I said, I believe in miracles. I believe I am a published author. 1 month later, my first book was published. So that faithfulness, that belief system is what allows it to come into the reality that we live. But what we must understand is that I had done quite a significant amount of work to release all of the limiting beliefs that I had been holding on to. A limiting belief. I have 8th grade English. I have never written anything beyond 8th grade.
Yes.
I had to teach myself how to write.
Yep.
So the limiting belief, which I'm not a writer, I don't know how to write, that was a major one for me to overcome.
So this is great. So we have step 1 and step 2. It's getting clear on the thing that you want, and then also having the courage to really look inside and see all the limiting beliefs that can be holding you back from that. Okay, good. So
then clean them up.
And then clean them up. Okay, awesome. Tell me, so can that be as simple as recognizing that it's a story you're telling yourself? It's
yes.
Just simply doesn't have to be the truth?
Yes, the healing process of anything can just be the witnessing of, okay, that's not working. That limiting belief is holding me back. And when we wake up to that call of that's not working, that's when teachers like you come into our life. That's when books fall off the shelf. That's when we land on Marie TV because we're tooling around YouTube, right? So we are led to what we need to heal. So the first point is just to recognize how you are blocking yourself and trust that the universe will give you exactly what you need to heal those limiting beliefs.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got our 2 steps. Is there a third step? So now we're in the process. So we're healing our limiting beliefs. We're active, we're engaged, we're aware.
We're
What
getting
do we do
into the
next?
know.
We're getting into the know. Okay, so step three is getting into the know.
Know the universe has your back.
Love that.
I think my mug says it. The universe knows.
Awesome. Tell me more about what that means.
So what happens when we get into the know is that we're working on releasing that disbelief, and that's a daily process. And the more we let go of that disbelief, the more we begin to acquire the presence of what it feels like to be in that manifestation. So the same way I was saying, I was a published author. I felt like a published author years before I was a published author. I felt abundant even when I was scrapping to get by.
Yeah.
I still felt the presence of abundance, which has allowed abundance to come into my life.
And I think that's probably the hardest part for all of us. And I can almost hear our audience members, again, we're in 188 countries around the world. So some people are going like, okay, that all sounds cool, but if I don't have any money, right? If I don't have any resources, if people don't believe in me, what can I do on a daily basis? Is it just a matter of saying, I really know this, and just honestly having that leap of faith and saying, I've got to stay in this state?
You cannot let your outside world dictate your internal condition. The outside world will reflect your internal condition. So if you are letting the outside stuff tell you I'm not good enough, then you are manifestation mishap. You are not allowing yourself to co-create.
So I'm going to pause there just for a second. A manifestation mishap, which you guys know, I love cute phrases for things. A manifestation mishap would be thinking like, oh, I'm having this clarity. I want to be a published author, but what would the mishap be there if they were...
Well, but my outside experience is not reflecting that. How am I going to get published? I don't have enough. And all of that is like really not supporting your desire.
Got it.
So the most important point here is to not let the outside world dictate your internal condition. Your internal condition will support your external experiences. So your work is to focus on the internal. And I've done that in many cases in my life, like, picking up quarters to pay my gas money. And in that presence of not having a lot of money, I still felt abundant. I did all that work to release my disbelief. And in that presence of believing in my abundance, I've allowed a tremendous amount of abundance to come into my life. So we got to hold the energy and let the outside world reflect that amazingness inside.
Okay, so another piece of resistance that could be coming towards us right now from the audience, from someone saying, hey, you know what? I've manifested before, or I'm in this process, but it's taken a long time. I've been in the knowing, I'm affirming, but it just ain't here yet. What would you say to someone like that who is just going like, when is it gonna come? When is this really gonna happen?
The most important step in the manifestation process is patience. And there's another beautiful line from A Course in Miracles, which is, those who are certain of the outcome can afford to wait and wait without anxiety.
I freaking love this. And I'm gonna make her say it again because it was that beautiful. Gab, say it one more time.
Those who are certain of the outcome can afford to wait and wait without anxiety.
Love that.
Mm-hmm. So when we have that presence of being certain, that certainty, I am a published author, that man is on the way, I am abundant. When we have that certainty, we can be patient, we can be in the know. And another manifestation mishap when you're not patient is that you're controlling, you're grasping, you're manipulating, and you are therefore blocking the natural order. You're blocking the positive energy to flow towards you because you're vibrating a frequency of negative energy. Because you're in fear, you're controlling and manipulating.
Love that. So this is all really good stuff. Can you give us a quick recap again, our little manifesting how-to for anyone out there this is all new to them?
First is clarity. Become very clear about what it is that you desire so you don't call in some crazy crap.
Love it.
The next piece is to be clear about all the limiting beliefs that are blocking you from believing and knowing that you are worthy of what you desire.
And that takes some courage.
That takes courage, it takes some time. And that willingness, you just wake up and say, I am willing, I'm ready to have that guidance come forward, and you'll be led to teachers like Marie. And then the third step is to be in that presence, in that energy of knowing that you are ready to receive, that you are in that presence of believing and knowing, I am a published author, I am abundant, I am exactly what you want.
And having the patience.
And then the final step is the patience, to be really relaxed, released, and allow, and stay in the know, letting the universe bring you exactly what it is that you desire.
It's awesome. Really, really great stuff.
This is also a belief, like everything is figureoutable.
Yes.
Is, like you're saying, the master key belief in one sense of like believing that everything's figureoutable. You alluded to it earlier. When someone hears that and go, Marie, it's easy for some to say, come on. It's easy for you to say now that things have worked out, or wait a minute. You know, I was at a conference recently and someone stood up and asked me a question. They were just like, how does this apply to the kid starving in Africa, right? Like they said that to me. And my response to them actually was like, well, if I was speaking to kids who are starving in Africa, I wouldn't be saying what I'm saying to you. I was like, this is to you. This is audience specific.
Yes.
Right? My advice that I was giving, I was like, I know who's in my audience. If I was speaking to kids starving in Africa, I'd be giving them something else.
That was appropriate
And relevant and accessible to them at that point. So, but for us, for everyone who's listening and watching right now, tell us if someone's doubting you, if someone, and I know you know this, but someone's doubting you, someone's looking at you going, Marie, that's
easy for you to say.
Easy for you to say, or that's a nice thought.
Yes.
But my position right now, like the situation I'm in, it's so bad, like you have no idea.
That's right. Okay, so I want to dive into this and peel it back in a couple of layers because it's so important. So number one, I am very clear that I have won what Warren Buffett has coined this phrase as the ovarian lottery, right? I'm a white woman in the United States. By no effort of my own, I was born into a family that gave me an education, put a roof over my head. I had running water. I had electricity, all of those things. There are millions, if not up to 1 billion people that don't have those same privileges or access to some of those resources. So I absolutely get that. That's why it was imperative for me throughout the book to weave in stories far diverse from my own. So folks from the developing world, folks throughout history that don't look like me, that did not grow up where I grew up with the same types of resources and privileges and advantages. And they embody this spirit, this notion that all of us have this innate power and wisdom within ourselves. And when that awakens, what we are capable of as humans is extraordinary. So we have that all over the book. We also have dozens and dozens and dozens of reader stories, right? So folks that haven't won Nobel Peace Prizes or that haven't done these extraordinary things. I've been talking about this idea for 2 decades. You know, here's a story.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to tell me a couple because
and then absolutely. And then I want to go to the rules because an 8-year-old actually challenged me when I was first writing this book and it came up with something brilliant. So let me tell the story of Jen. You know, a lot of folks are like, well, yeah, everything is figureoutable if you want to build a business or get your health back online or perhaps save a relationship. But what if I'm facing something difficult and hard that isn't? So a woman named Jen wrote to us. And I had first shared this idea with the world in a really public way on Oprah's stage. So she was doing a Super Soul one-day event. She had asked me to speak at it. And the title of my talk was Everything is Figureoutable. So Oprah then put that talk online. It's on her podcast. And so folks heard it that I had never met before. So a woman named Jen wrote to us and said, hey, Marie, thank you so much for your talk. This lesson that everything is figureoutable is something my mom, who I love so much, had been trying to teach me forever, but I kind of really heard it from you. And then I shared the talk with my mom and she loved it too. But then everything changed. My mom, who is the most important person in my life, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And suddenly nothing seemed figureoutable. And she said, but then I actually took a walk and I looked at it from a different perspective and realized it was. For example, I could find my mom nursing care that could go and attend to her even though she lived in this rural area. Number 2, I could figure out how to get my mom foods that she could actually tolerate. Number 3, I got medical equipment so that my mom could spend her last days, and in fact, her last 5 weeks on this planet, where she wanted to be, which is in her home. And she said, I can tell you without reservation that yes, everything is figureoutable. And thank you so much for sharing this idea because it made a difference to 2 women on the other side of the world. And so we have other stories of folks who have used this idea of facing addiction, facing loss, death, grief, diagnosis that are life-changing
in terms of how long they will be on this planet and how they will exist on this planet. So those are all embedded in there.
Yeah.
So I just want to share that.
If you've ever lost motivation because you're afraid your dreams are just too unrealistic, this one is for you. Today's question comes from Bree, who writes, "Hey Marie, you're such an inspiration. I so respect your advice." Thank you. "Here's my situation. My whole life I've had big dreams and lots of ambition. Then this little word started to pop up from people around me. Unrealistic. For example, I wanted to work in publishing and was told that was unrealistic. There were so many obstacles and so few jobs. However, I now work for the second largest publishing company in the world. But there's a new dream I want to pursue, and I can already hear the cacophony of voices in my head insisting this dream is unrealistic. A certain level of realism is necessary, but too much can create self-doubt. So Marie, how do I handle not only hearing from others how unrealistic my dream is, but also not let myself drown out my own desires? Thank you so much, Bree." I love this question so much, Bree. Every single one of us who both dreams and creates things faces voices of dissent, both from people that we know, from people that we don't know, and very often the most deadly comes from within. And if we don't take a thoughtful, conscious approach to taking on our unrealistic dreams, they just ain't gonna happen. But if you are up for the challenge, and I think you are, here are 5 steps that can help. Step number 1 is frame your dream. And here's what this means. We can't become what we can't envision. So when I say frame your dream, what I mean is I want you to take a picture of it in your mind's eye in vivid, specific detail. And then what I want you to do is translate that picture into words, meaning write down that big unrealistic dream. And I know that you may have heard about the power of writing things down before, but the truth is most people just don't do it, which is so crazy because the research is conclusive on this. There was a study done by Dr. Gail Matthews that shows that you are 42% more likely to achieve your goals if you write them down. So what I want you to do is whip out your journal or hop on that keyboard and get writing. Step number 2 is filter opinions and fend off negativity. You've got to take responsibility for the energy that you allow in your life. I want you to fend off negativity as much as humanly possible. You know, we know so much more about the brain than we did just 20 years ago. Neuroscience has taught us incredible things, like that our brains are continuously shaped by our thoughts and our experiences. And you know this to be true. I mean, negativity is one of the most toxic forces on the planet. It's toxic for your brain, for your nervous system, and for your ability to stay motivated. So do me this favor, okay? Do not solicit or listen to the opinions of people who are notorious for just being Debbie Downers. The one mistake that I've seen people make consistently is they almost habitually talk to the exact person who is the most likely to shoot them down and make them feel like crap. So don't do that. And here's another key. I want you to always, always, always consider the source. Meaning, don't put a lot of stock into other people's opinions unless they're actually out there consistently taking risks and being brave and actually making things happen. I mean, if you think about it, let's say, I don't know, you wanted to climb Mount Everest. Would you ever take advice from someone who's never even attempted the summit? No, of course not. That would be crazy. So don't take advice from anyone unless you really think it through. And I want you to ask, has this person achieved an unrealistic or impossible dream? Are they taking meaningful risks on a consistent basis? Do you admire who they are, how they live, and what they contribute? If not, do not use them as a sounding board for your idea. Step number 3 is flood yourself with positive examples. So once you've removed the negative outputs as best as you can, step number 3 is all about feeding your mind and surrounding yourself with positive stories on a consistent basis of other people who have achieved unrealistic dreams. So think about Helen Keller, for example, who was blind and deaf by the age of 2, yet with the help of teachers, she created this extraordinary literary career, writing hundreds of speeches and essays and books. And there are thousands of biographies at the library or even on Netflix. And the great thing that I love about biographies is you also get a chance to witness other people's stumbles and their falls and all the failures that they experience along the way, which of course, stumbles and falls and failures, those are inevitable for all of us. And it's worth noting that just about anyone whose achievements are worthy of a biography or a documentary probably had an unrealistic dream. So do this for me. Feed your mind examples of people who speak out and stand up for what they believe in and make change happen. Step number 4 is fast forward. So if you've watched the show for any amount of time, you know this. I love end-of-life studies. And here's what we know for a fact. When you're on your deathbed, you couldn't care less about what anybody who says your dreams are unrealistic says. I mean, Bronnie Ware's research tells us this very, very clearly, that the single biggest regret people have when they're about to pass is this. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. So Bree, my friend, stop worrying about what other people might think or say about how unrealistic your dream is. It really does not matter. The only thing that matters is what you do about it now. Step number 5 is focus on action. So this, my friend, is the most important step of all. Action is the antidote to fear, and you don't have to take perfect action. You just need to take any action. Brick by brick, inch by inch, step by step. That is how all great things are achieved. And you know my mantra, I believe everything is figure-outable. And the best way to figure anything out is through action-based learning. So one more thing before we wrap up, Bree. Unrealistic dreams are totally where it's at. That's where all the growth and the excitement in life comes from. After all, what other kind of dreams are there? Dreams like this?
Marie, you will not believe the dream I had last night. So reasonable. I'm shopping, I'm getting all my normal vegetables, but they didn't have avocados. I asked the manager, he brought me some from the back. So realistic, so inspiring.
Wow, that sounds inspiring. I mean, you could do that. I think you can make that happen. So Bree, there you have it. 5 steps to help you bring your unrealistic dreams to life. And if you ever start to waver, remember this tweetable. If someone tells you your big dream is unrealistic, that's a sure sign you should go for it. Oh my goodness, that was so fun. Now, if you loved this episode, you're gonna love this next one even more because it goes even deeper. So enough talking, click, watch now, and I'll see you there. All beliefs are a choice. And choices can be changed, right? So every belief is a choice and choices can be changed if we are willing.